The End of Historical Truth. Why your history textbook is a logical impossibility. The philosophical paradoxes of historical narratives. The way history is understood and retold often presents fascinating logical inconsistencies. This explores how these narrative paradoxes challenge conventional interpretations of the past. What if everything you think you know about history was based on a logical impossibility? Often, we tell ourselves a linear and organized story of the past. But as we delve deeper, we find narratives full of paradoxes that defy simple explanations. Prepare to have your understanding of historical truth profoundly questioned. Historical paradox, the challenge to linear narrative, the core of the philosophy of history, where the search for truth encounters insurmountable barriers of logic and perception. History as a narrative is not the past itself, but rather a reconstruction made from fragments, memories, documents, and inevitably, interpretation. When exploring historical narratives, we encounter fascinating paradoxes that shatter the illusion of a straight and organized line of the past. The paradox of identity and change. Ship of Theseus. One of the most illustrative paradoxes for history is the paradox of the ship of Theseus. The context, the ship that transported the hero Theseus, is preserved. Over time, each decaying piece is replaced by a new one. In the end, all the original pieces have been replaced. The logical inconsistency. Question: is the ship that remains the same ship that departed? Historical paradox. Can we affirm that a long-lasting institution, nation or culture, such as democracy or Italy, is the same as in its beginnings, even if its members, laws, customs, and territory have completely changed? The story attempts to establish a continuity that, in essence, may be a fiction of identity. The paradox of interpretation, the historian's gaze. This paradox reflects the subjective and selective nature of historical creation. The question: the historian is a subject of the present who looks at the past through the lens of their own experiences, values, and methods. The challenge: is the history we read the truth of the past or the present's perspective on the past? Historical paradox. For history to exist as a narrative, it needs the historian's interpretation. However, this interpretation, in giving meaning, distorts the purity of the raw and inaccessible fact, making the search for absolute truth an impossibility inherent in the act of narrating. The paradox of the source. Eubulides' lyre. Primary sources, the foundations of history, also present a paradox of self-reference and veracity. The analogy. The classic lyre. Paradox. This sentence is false. If it's true, it's false. If it's false, it's true. The source problem. A historical source is an account, a statement about events. How can we verify the veracity of this source without depending on another source, which in turn requires the same verification in an infinite chain? Historical paradox. The act of judging the veracity of a historical record often requires us to accept as true a set of unproven assumptions. Ultimately, history requires a methodological act of faith in the human capacity to record and in the coherence of reality itself. These paradoxes suggest that history is not an exact science in search of a single absolute truth, with a capital T, but rather a field of verisimilitude and plausible interpretations. Non-linearity. The illusion of a linear history, cause-effect, is often a narrative simplification to provide comfort and meaning. In reality, the past is a complex web, where events influence each other in undetectable ways. Logical inconsistency. History often has to deal with contradictory narratives, e.g., different accounts of a battle, and omissions, lack of sources for marginalized groups, forcing us to accept the coexistence of inconsistencies to maintain the overall coherence of the picture. In short, history is a logical structure built upon an illogical foundation, the past itself, which is unattainable and fragmentary.